Hi. I do. And those over here, I've got all my.
Hi, everyone. We are going to go ahead and get started. I just wanted to say thank you all so much for joining me tonight. We have gotten to host, I was actually talking about this to the writers before the reading, that this is like the best encore ever, because we've hosted all three of them at different points, completely separate and apart from each other. And there are definitely some highlights. So yeah, this is the encore reading of honestly maybe the year, because this is one of our last readings in the store for this year. So what a awesome way to, round it out. We are celebrating tonight Sara R. Burnett's latest book, Seed Celestial, which was the winner of the 2021 Autumn House Press Poetry Prize, selected by Eileen Miles. Can we give Sara a round of applause? Tonight, Sarah's reading alongside two local favorites, Jan Beatty and Daniel M. Shapiro. And thank you all again for joining us tonight. A little bit about myself and Whiteville quickly. I'm Halsey, the events coordinator here at Whiteville Bookstore. Whiteville Bookstore is a family-owned general interest independent store located in the Bloomfield neighborhood of Pittsburgh. Our store motto is conversation, community, and culture, and we strive to be a home for book lovers. Our events programming features local, national, and international writers and translators reading, discussing, and celebrating literature of all genres for all ages. We do have one event coming up after this, which is another way that we're rounding out the year. This one's pretty huge. We are very excited to host local author Chloe Lease in celebration of her latest romance novel, which I feel like romance novels are getting a heyday right now, which good for romance novels. And she is celebrating Two Wrongs Make a Right, and she is joined by Maisie Eddings, author most recently of Lizzie Blake's Best Mistake. And Chloe has pulled out all the stops for her pre-order campaign. She is personalizing every single one. And I wish I could show you the stack of books that we have in the back. She's also giving away a design that she, I think, drew from one of the scenes in the book. Among other things, we have a pre-order campaign available on our website. So if you want to check it out, I do really encourage you to. We are currently live streaming this event. So hello to all of the folks who are joining us online. Thank you so much for coming. The restrooms are, so yeah, just a few notes. The restrooms are behind me. Please feel free to use them at any time. We do have the cafe door locked in the back. That's just so Madeira on the other side can check Vax cards. I always like to tell people our sink will make a trickling sound. So if that happens, just ignore it. It's fine.
It's very loud.
It is. Just like pretend like it's not happening. And if you, we do ask that you keep your mask on at all times, unless you are eating or drinking or talking at the mic like I am right now. The cafe is open. So speaking of the cafe, the last call for drinks and snacks will be immediately at the end of this event. Once everyone has placed their last orders, Jill will start cleaning up, and we ask that you refrain from purchasing anything during the event so that we can pay attention to all of our readers. We do have copies of everybody's books in stock. We have almost all of Jan's books tonight. And then we have two of Dan's, and then we have Seed Celestial as well. So please, buy them. Either myself or Jill can help you on the cafe side after the event's over, or Madeira can help you on the original side, whichever you prefer. And Sarah will be signing right immediately after the event. So go ahead, grab your book, and you can meet Sarah at the table, and then you can chat it up with her and have her sign your book. And I think that that's all from me. Unless I'm forgetting anything, which I don't think I am. It's my absolute pleasure to turn things over to the managing editor of Autumn House Press, Mike Good.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here. I know we're a little bit further on the pandemic. You've probably heard it before, but it means a lot to get to gather in person with you all and to share the space with these wonderful writers who are going to read some really wonderful poetry, I think. So I'd like to thank White Whale Bookstore. I'd like to thank Anna, Halsey, Jill, and I'd also like to thank our editor-in-chief, Christine Stroud, for doing so much work to put this event and many events like it together. Yeah. Bottom House, I guess, in case you aren't familiar with us, we were founded in 1998, so we're about to celebrate our 25th birthday, which is very exciting. We publish poetry, fiction, nonfiction, about 8 books per year right now, and we're based in Garfield, so we're not too far away, and we're always grateful to get to join White Whale and share our books with you. So hi also again to everybody online. I think I'll cut it there, and I will have the pleasure of introducing our first reader. Each reader will read, then I will come up and introduce the next reader, but we're going to start with Daniel Shapiro, Jan Beatty, then Sarah will read last. So Daniel M. Shapiro is a special education teacher who lives in Pittsburgh. His book of poems include This Is Not a Mixtape for the End of the World, How the Potato Chip Was Invented, and Heavy Metal Fairy Tales. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks, Christine and Mike, for publishing Sarah's book. It's wonderful. You continue to put out great stuff. Also, thanks to Halsey and Jill. This space has been wonderful for many years, and it keeps getting better. So that's good. And to Jan, and of course to Sarah as well. I could go on and on about both poets, but I will jump into my poems now. These poems are all about. So I grew up in Rochester, New York. So you get you're going to get some, a poet who is based in D.C. You've got somebody from Rochester, New York. You've got Jan from this area. So we're going to cover a lot of ground. And the sort of big star when I was very young in terms of music was Chuck Mangione in Rochester, which if you don't know who he was, you'll find out through his poems. So everything I read tonight is going to be part of it. So the first poem is Chuck Mangione, Part 1. His surname means glutton, but I imagine him gathering only enough of the world's joy to carry in his throat, to go from city to city, sharing it with us, a mother bird coasting on thermals. He started in the same place I started in, a place known for its cold, its grayness, dark current of a river. His shine of brass cut through exhaust-covered snow to bask in greenness, to breathe in sleeping lilacs. He speaks in the accent I seldom hear in myself anymore, flattened A's as if he's reacting to a jolt in the air, a lake effect, mustard slapped on a white hot. I expect to see him circling the reservoir at Cobb's Hill, understated skyline shrugging coolly in the distance. I saw him only once, boarding a plane that left before mine, off to Woodshed with the clouds. Alive, a Chuck Mangione record. This album is available only on vinyl, so I just bought it on vinyl, and somehow the vinyl album sent from Buffalo, basically sister city of Rochester, somehow the vinyl album had gifts inside because the person who owned this vinyl album for me kept artifacts, kept flyers from the Saratoga Jazz Concert in 1974, featuring Chuck Mangione and Gap Mangione. And this ex-owner of the vinyl album taped 3 of these flyers, for whatever reason, 3, to the cover, plus a ticket stub from Saratoga 74. So when you open the gatefold, it's like opening a shrine to Chuck Mangione, like opening the Ark of the Covenant. And then I wonder who would create such a shrine and then give it away. But I imagine this somebody must have loved Chuck Mangione the way I do, or perhaps somehow more. But this person likely died because this vinyl album and flyers and ticket stub surely mattered more than cash for one's distaste for objects that fill too much space. And I imagine this person clutching someone special, as this was a human being who therefore needed to hold on to something or somebody. And we hold on to music more than we hold on to most people or houses or cars, because sounds never really leave. They just wait to lift us through that next break in silence. The Jazz Brothers, an album featuring Chuck and Gap Mangione. This is not the Chuck Mangione most people know. Muted, he could pass for Miles Davis, a fracture of melancholy winding through secret love. Recorded in 1960, it captures a 19-year-old who must have been out to prove he had the chops, the swing, singular vision to come sometime later. His brother Gap plays mostly a supportive role, soloing on Strutting with Sandra in a Silver Timmons way, then slipping back into shadows. I saw Gap Mangione play when he had a longtime gig at a hotel restaurant in Fairport. He sat calmly at the piano as if he didn't want to disturb the diners, who innocently clanked and chit-chatted as if there were such a thing as background music. I felt odd standing by myself a few feet from him, clapping between tunes, realizing I was about the same age then as he was when he recorded the Jazz Brothers debut, realizing I had yet to play or even know what to play. He nodded as if to say he was glad I got it, as it's hard to get anything in your early 20s, still more rare for somebody else to notice. Chuck Mangione Part 2. There was that time when Chuck Mangione taught us how to play the trumpet and flugelhorn in 4 minutes. He wore a shirt made of stars, a hat of love's warm underbelly. He pointed at parts of instruments, bell, mouthpiece, valve, mute, but we looked away and listened to him speak in a voice we grew up hearing, that of a longtime Rochesterian, perhaps one of our grandparents' friends who would invite us in for some sort of salad, red dusted deviled eggs, and we would always leave happier because we had learned something new, like pinochle, or what their adult children were doing, or why some jokes work better than others, or that they once knew a man who could sit in an empty auditorium talking about blowing air into brass, how a small story could lift them over days when they just didn't know. Feels So Good, a Chuck Mangione song that reached number 4 on the pop charts. This song did not teach me how to love, but how to take stock of it, what a man looks like when he no longer cares what he looks like, when he hugs a horn, a life preserver. The song is 9 minutes, 43 seconds of men daring boys to embrace the necessary opposite of dead-end 70s macho. On Love's album cover, the letters of our feelings can't stand up straight. They rest on a shoulder dyed red as a valentine. Love is the soft hands that caress pork pie hats, reshape them into signatures. I took stock of love in F major, a subconscious guitar pedal marking time. Closing in on 8 years old, I dipped my boots into snow. No pain in the exploding whiteness of a heart-warmed winter. Chuck Mangione Part 3. There was that one time when he became a sort of belligerent light, addressing critics of his music, what it means to jazz purists. But what is jazz, from Buddy Bolden to the sound of the waiting room, if jazz can't walk? Why not ask a man who chose the flugelhorn over trumpet after paying dues on the latter, slipping switchblade licks into hot hardball, slinking off stage in a bleed out of hand claps? What good is living in a dead man's clothes? Inside a coffin, nothing can jump. If we are taught being happy is less authentic, we need to step outside the real and into a book with soft pages, smooth words, RIPs for RIPs, that fresh scent of a spine cracking open. Alive, a Chuck Mangione record, Part 2. This morning, we dusted off our sunglasses, watched runners sweat in fewer layers. 2 of them ran hand in hand, bad form for athletes, but this is the way runners run through 60 miles young, where flutes sing like those penultimate movie scenes in which someone finally becomes outwardly vulnerable. Someone finally finds the flip side of a broken heart, perhaps in the rain or on top of a mountain out of breath. Electric pianos shimmer as lovers freeze frame, as credits roll to list all the many thanks, the this would not have been possible without, that enable suspension of disbelief. Worlds of okays that couldn't exist without worlds of pain. Chuck Mangione performs Land of Make-Believe on The Tonight Show. Comedians talk about what it was like to go on Carson, the make or break, the sweat often followed by extreme shift, graciousness from the big shot during the nervous one-on-one. Chuck Mangione's appearance in '79, not his first, was nonetheless tough. Band expanded to 20-piece, no break in syncopation. Only a slight stutter in Chuck Mangione's fingers as they rest above flugelhorn keys indicate the slightest bit of nerves. As he steps back from the horn to conduct, he pogos like a punk rocker, basking in a piccolo solo as if it were a siren turned into an angel. Later, when he plays again, shutting his eyes tightly as if the music he creates must be thought rather than seen, the nerves might as well have never been there, having drifted away like nights of lost dreams. Chuck Mangione, Part 4. If we were to meet, I would ask you how you measure aging. Is it by counting your dead loved ones like rings on a tree, making a fever chart of pepper to salt ratios in your beard? Maybe you look at songs you've written from 50s to present, find what seems naive to you now, runs of 16th notes that don't rest for space. Or you drive through Rochester, New York to tally all the places that aren't there anymore, industries that can't look the river in the eye. Maybe your right hand has slowed just a split second so no one else would know. I bet this is the knowing people try to claim as wisdom. When I saw Glenn Campbell on his goodbye tour, he played the Wichita lineman solo perfectly, finished the song, then went blank as a childhood of just getting by. Music held him up with Telecaster strings. I wonder if death is becoming the thing you care about most, strong radio waves lifting all the hooks that can't be undone. This is my last poem. It is called Closing Questions for Chuck Mangione. What do you do when you feel like you might not have anything left? You just sit there, flugelhorn in lap, fingers seeming to be disembodied as they touch keys, nails tapping on a Formica countertop. Do you ever feel like you don't have enough breath to hold one note, a cheap 16th? Where do you go when you have nowhere to go? Inside a gatefold cover to listen to silence? No needle necessary? Or do songs strike you to life like that first blast of shower water? Pop hits dripping so plentifully that you can't even keep them all? Do you ever think there's no way to have enough hats to cover up thoughts you never wanted? What if all the songs have already been written and it's your job to rescue them from wherever sound doesn't like to go? What if you want to retire but can't sleep? Can't ever make melody stop just once? Thanks.
Thank you, Dan Shapiro. That was lovely. May we all, as Chuck Mangione did, as readers, writers, and poets, have the courage to choose the flugelhorns over the trumpets when possible. I have the real pleasure to welcome our next reader up, Jan Beatty. Jan Beatty's seventh book, American Bastard, won the Red Hen Nonfiction Award. The Body Wars was published by the University of Pittsburgh Press in 2020. In a new chapbook, Sky Dog, was just released by Lefty Blondie Press. In the New York Times, Naomi Shiobnai said, Jan Beatty's new poems in the Body Wars shimmer with luminous connection, travel a big life, and grand map of encounters. Beatty worked as a waitress, abortion counselor, and in maximum security prisons. For years, she directed the Mad Women in the Attic workshops at Carlow University. Please make Jan feel welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me in the back? Yes. Okay. So this is a nice night, and thank you for coming out tonight in the cold, and appreciate it, and really happy to celebrate. Yeah, Seed Celestial by Sara R. Burnett. Make sure you get a copy of this. It's very cool. You'll love it. And I was saying to Christine Stroud, what a cool author photo this is. Because I mean you're beautiful, but it's like it's really warm and inviting. It's just a really cool author photo. I mean, you know, just an aside, it's the poems that matter, but you know, it's just a great book. So get yourself a copy. So happy to be here with all of you and with Dan Shapiro. Thanks, Dan. That was I never heard that many Chuck Rancher. That was great. And thanks to Autumn House and to White House. I'm going to read some new poems here. And let's see, here we go. I was born in a steel mill. I was born in the violation of others. I was born blue. I was born blue, almost aborted by my mother's hands and a coat hanger. But who cares? It's one small, almost death in the many deaths. The women killed and never found. The women killed in their own homes, then disposed of. The women killed by boyfriends, husbands, partners, strangers, buried in the dirt of this country, the unknown bodies of women. The splitting tools. I knew nothing of the splitting tools. Axes, hatchets, wedges. Only the throwing stone of anger, the best aim, the raw finish. The file blade of the moment, walking down Murray Avenue in Pittsburgh. A bottle of cheap Chardonnay in my right hand, my left stuck out with thumb raised. Hitchhiking to the hippie concert on Flagstaff Hill, only a mile away. But I could hear the jam bands starting up. Yellow VW stopped and I jumped in, raised the bottle to the driver, a guy in his 30s with red hair, flaming beard, and he took a swig. Where are you headed? He said. Just over the hill to the concert, I said. Aren't you afraid to hitchhike? He asked. No, I said, my car broke down. Oh, he said. He ran his eyes over my summer t-shirt. He looked back at the road and said, I have a hatchet under my seat. Oh, I said, looking at the overhanging trees. Do you want to see it? He said, turning his head with a curled smile. No, that's okay, I said, trying to keep my breathing steady, my chest filling with wild air, my throat becoming stone. At the hill's bottom, I flung open the door and jumped onto the road, and the spirit voices looking down onto the bodies of war spoke. I rolled away, he sped away, and my face in the gray concrete had me looking at land in a different way. Miles of blacktop, years of blacktop between what's right and this. Who was I at war with? I cried on the street, weeping with new waters, drowning in the river of killings I would later hear. A man with red hair and beard, stories of beheading women in PA and West Virginia. Unknown woman, heads found in streams and rivers. These waters weren't my quest of deep splitting, but the stone axe sharpened for thinning, primitive, chipping away at the internal weeping. I have a couple poems that you could say are religious, or you could say maybe anti-religious. But if you had the experience of going to a Catholic grade school, you might relate to this, or you might not. This is called Lowrider. Anthony was a lowrider, silver fire running up his leg. We third graders flamed as the nuns came running in their black orthopedic shoes. Where's Anthony? All 20 of us lined up for the bathroom walk, turned as we heard him scraping down the tiled hall, heard him dragging limp in the silver brace that ran outside his pant leg, around his heavy black shoe and up to his knee. A shining steel, his own metallic flame shooting up his leg, the side panel of the body. And in his high gravel voice, he said, I'm here. You're late, said the non-jailers, the fat of their arms hanging like weird fruit or weapons, sheathed in the sleeves of black habits. Anthony, you have to keep up. You can't use your leg as an excuse. And the flames went spiking, and punishment came as if by tribunal. The low murmur spread through the line of uniformed 9-year-olds. They took his shoe. They're making him walk in his sock. Anthony, crying now, his brace shining as the sun hit through the 50s paned windows. We all moved slowly toward him, low and slow, a long snake. Just look up, we said. And everybody looked up, our hearts flaming. We were glimmering. We were metallic. We rolled onto the water fountain, and they couldn't even see our engines. 450s with a dirty hum as we glided past, leaving them in their wrecked house of religion. We saw sparrows through the paned windows, free and flying in formation. Anthony's brace scraping, his sock foot sliding, and we let loose. The biggest shot of renegade air, hydraulics pumping, arriving together while the nuns huddled in their cruelty by the classroom door, holding a crippled boy's shoe. This is going to get really lightweight and airy soon, but not quite yet. This is called Scarline. On any given day, they would lock me up. I miss those hills of the body, the line bruises from slamming the edge of the dresser. Those lines of demarcation are the scar lines of hurricanes, new continents rising to the surface. This happened here. This girl lived. I was a split baby, half a body here, half nowhere. A silent baby, split off with the dull tools of the cutters. I stayed until birds flew out of me, until words became animals. Mothers selling us to strangers with a wallet, and the walking bodies say, when I saw you, I knew you were mine. I'm not yours. You can't own a split thing. I found the cheap gold cross you sent buried under papers and books. The letter where your priest told you adoption is God's work. I don't know if you're still alive. Blood Mother, finding you was like finding religion, but without the cruelty and deception. But then what's left? Only continents, landforms, upsurges. In this split kingdom, this body walk of life on the scar line. Okay, here's the funny poem. Yeah, possibly. This is this is a restaurant poem, and it starts with an epigraph by Justin Townes Earl, Steve Earle's son, who unfortunately overdosed. But this is Justin Townes Earl. But you can't trust a rich girl, no farther than you can throw her. This is called Love Kitchen. The young bearded guy at the Love Kitchen in Santa Fe says, "My name's Killian. Would you like some kale with your eggs?" "No," I say. "Chai pudding on the side?" "We have new keto chai." "That's okay," I say. "Oh," he says, and gives me an Allison number 37 on a stick. There's classical music in the background. There's a lot of air and light. We get our own silverware, water from the community jug labeled H2O. It's pleasant, but I'm missing Pittsburgh grit. The tattooed young mother who runs her tables tight and fast. The lifer who turns her head sideways and says, "Don't get the soup. It's watered down. I'll get you a salad instead and call it even," rolling her eyes over her shoulder at the boss running around. When I waitressed, I was fired weekly. I was great at food delivery, but refused to cater to the rich. No, I don't want to know your name, your daughter's new baby, your fabulous vacation in Spain. But here's your food, on time, the way you want it. I got fired once for not complimenting the manager on her new dress. I could say more. Gillian's pleasant voice calls out, "Number 37, your love order's ready." Allison and I pick up the food at the counter, eat the $54 breakfast for two. I'm thinking of community love, Campbell McGrath, and dinner at the greasy taco stand on the corner. Okay, maybe not really fun. Okay, I got two more. This is from Sky Dog's minor chapbook with Lefty Blind Press, which is Amy Lee Hyman and Marguerite Miller. And they're going national, which is very cool. And I'm going to read the title poem here. So when I wrote this, or when I titled the book, do you guys know that Sky Dog is Dwayne Allman's nickname? Yeah, okay. I kind of backed up, and I didn't know that. And then I found out, so okay. So I have a book. Dwayne Allman became part of the book, which I'm happy about. So Sky Dog starts with an epigraph by Jim Morrison. Cancel my subscription to the resurrection. Doug sent me a golden ginkgo leaf in the mail, in a dancing ninja's envelope, and a lucky in life, reckless in love card. A large woman in a straw hat and blue rhinestone cat glasses in an old school bathing suit, sealed with a stamp of a Japanese maidservant by Ishoshi Choki, designer of ukiyo-e woodblock prints. I wander the house thinking of burning, what marks us and what stays. Soon the light will blaze the side window. It's the thin, delicate ginkgo that survives, even under siege in San Francisco, fire and virus. What is worth resurrecting? A guy I know wears the face of his first love, a 3x5 tattoo in blazing colors covering his neck. He walks the streets of the neighborhood and tells his story of leaving her at the airport in Saigon and how his body churned with being torn from her. Sometimes I see him on the street, pointing and his neck gesturing. The war, he was young, and see her hair, liquid dark. Then he shows his Sky Dog tattoo, Dwayne Allman on his arm after his bike wipeout in 71. His only two loves, he says. Dwayne's long wild hair in faded blue, with Sky Dog repeating in a circle around him. Wilson Pickett gave him that name, he says, when they played together at Muscle Shoals. Sometimes he slides a photo of his love from the army jacket he still wears. See her delicate flower dress. Him 50 years younger in uniform, his thick body beside hers, and now she's on and inside him. He built an altar to her in his front room with angel stones and a fire wheel to cleanse the karma and honor those passing, and a propped up copy of Live at the Fillmore to let loose the Sky Dog vibe. Dwayne Allman smiling on the cover as the drug connection arrives. When he tells me the story the first time he's alive with her, sparks flying out from his body as he speaks her name after not seeing her for 5 decades. His fire splatters me, sets me ablaze. My clothes are gone, my eyes have changed. It's a love wildfire, and I'm in it. My body moves differently, slides in the knowing story of his love. In the new poem he wrote for her, I dream your dress at the airport, last time as the fire wheel spins. He slips the photo slowly into the combat sleeve pocket, zips the jacket to cover her. He walks her to the park for his daily resurrection. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jen. So I grew up in Pittsburgh or near Pittsburgh in Columborough. Then I went to grad school down in Southwest Virginia, and I would constantly talk about how nice the service was and how much I missed lifers who would yell at me not to get the soup. So don't touch me in a specific way. I appreciate it. So yeah, I've been with Autumn House for going on 5 years now, and I've not actually had the chance to introduce an author who I've worked with before at a reading. So this is very special to me. Sara was a delight to work with. I think that she really stands out among other authors I've had the pleasure of working with, and just her passion, precision, and her openness. It was really a wonderful collection to work on. I think it's a wonderful book. I think you'll agree once you read it. I would also add some other poets tend to agree. Michael Collier calls Sara Burnett's work quietly fierce, urgent. And yeah, there's a lot more to say, but I feel like I could get lost in me, so I think I'll just turn it over to, I'll tell you a little more about Sara and I'll turn it over to her. So Sara R. Burnett has published poems and essays in Barrow Street, Copper Nickel, Matter, Hank, and elsewhere. A finalist for the 2019 Enoch Pratt Free Library Poetry Award and recipient of scholarships from the Bread Loaf Writers Conference. She holds an MFA in creative writing from the University of Maryland and an MA in English literature from the University of Vermont. She lives in Maryland with her husband and children. Seed Celestial is her first book. Please welcome Sara. Thank you all.
I just want to first say what a pleasure it is to be here tonight. And thanks so much to Christine and Mike. It has really been a pleasure to work with both of you this past year, and really great to meet you guys finally in person. Yeah, Autumn House Fest has been wonderful to work with. I feel like the stars aligned and the God shined on me with this one, so thank you. And Jen and Dan, you guys are a hard act to follow. I loved all of your poems that you shared tonight. And thank you also for your kind words. I'm going to start reading some poems. The first poem that I'm going to read is called Primary Source. And it is a meaningful poem for me in terms of my writing process. It was really when I had, my daughter is now 6, my oldest daughter is 6, and my youngest daughter, my son is 3. And my daughter features a lot in this book. And this was like, you know, after she was born, there was a period of many months where I just wasn't writing and couldn't write. I mean, I was just trying to sleep and eat and just recover. And this was really one of the first poems that came out of it. I mean, the first poem that I thought could, you know, was good enough. There are a lot of bad ones, right? But it also revealed a lot of the poems before were just less urgent and a little less urgent, and there was a different style. So I wanted to start with this one tonight because it marked a big kind of transition in my subject matter, but also in the form. Primary source. A teacher of mine once said, every writer has only 4 or 5 subjects. There's happiness in repetition if you don't hear the seconds ticking. What's worse, dedicating yourself to failure or denying it again and again? Patcher's pupil, a Renaissance carver, perfected the pine folds of St. Margaret's robes using a large axe, then several smaller ones, then sanded and painted her in fine detail. Did he ever think, where did the time go? She stands at the back of a church in Tyrol, a dragon riding under her feet. What do you live for? The quiet before sunrise or the moments after? The baby coos in her prayer. I've always wanted to use the word pram at least once in a poem. Now that I'm a mother, I have a better understanding of terror than the miraculous. Who will she be when she's grown? Do I have time to shower? If, as a famous writer decreed, it takes 10,000 hours to achieve mastery, I've perfected rocking my hips from side to side, changing a diaper in dim dawn light. My baby practices sitting up even in her sleep. Her head bobs like a buoy, her eyelids shudder. My teacher said sometimes your first line is your last line. What's more, the moment she walks or the moment she falls down? Looking again at the photo, the dragon lies curled at Margaret's feet. I'm holding an image of an image someone else carved in my hands. She loves it when I sprinkle my fingers down on her like rain. I'm holding the rain in my hands, and in my hands, the rain holds her. I can still remember. But the other part that I also write about, I mean, being a parent also brings a lot of more anxiety into your life, more fear. I know we all have that, but particularly around the issue of climate change and the future that we're leaving. And so this poem talks about that. It's called Emlyn. There's a man who cares for the last snail of its kind, Acagnella apexvolva, knows precisely how much moisture, shade, and light it needs to thrive, while it spends its dwindling time in a glass cabinet. Don't think about what you can start, think about what you can end, was the advice I heard on a time management podcast while slicing bananas for my daughter's breakfast. The banana comes from Guatemala, where its kind is plagued by the fusarium fungus, to a possible, almost certain, if it continues at this rate, extinction. I've never been to Guatemala, seen a rotting banana plant, or touched a snail's glossy shell of the kind that resembles the palate of a chocolate box, dark brown, chestnut, white, the occasional splash of mint. I watch my daughter collect stones in her plastic bucket, clinking them beside her as she runs smiling from one corner of our yard to another. Impossible to say if this July is the warmest month since the last warmest month until it is. My dread a garden crawling with invasive insects. Later, she smashes bananas at the table between her dirt-crusted fingernails, laughs at the stickiness, while I try to finish the article I started days ago about Acagnella apexvolva, whose largest threat is, you might have guessed, another snail. Euglendina rosea, aptly named for its rosy-hued carapace, who will follow the slimy trail of its gastropod cousin, then yank it from its shell with its serrated tongue and swallow it like Cronus, shell and all. When a species is the last of its kind, it's called an emlyn, a word that reminds me of changeling. Such a fairy swap child I called my own. I've made this place for her, warm, soft, a place that someday I'll not be allowed to enter, that may not even survive me. And continuing on that theme, I write a series of poems in this book about the myth of Demeter and Persephone. And when Demeter lost Persephone to Hades in the underworld, that gave rise to the seasons in the Greek myth, and which I took to be a type of climate catastrophe, and thus imagined a series of poems coming mostly from Demeter's side. Demeter's wager. At first, it didn't seem horrific. The earth dying as I felt, if I could, like dying. I stopped eating, dressing, coloring my hair. Then I grew sick of the trees, the way they, full and green, mocked how I felt, so I stripped them bare. After that, it was easier to let go. Slowly, I gave away my belongings and hers, shoes, belts, coats, still wearing her scent, books with their dog-eared pages. Then meadows, estuaries, streams, forests and their forest creatures, whole species of birds and fish. It was almost eerie how light I felt when I didn't care for Earth. Every day, no surprise, the sky the color of lint. When I thought finally there's nothing left to save or throw away, I remembered I had all eternity, an empty glass to fill. I couldn't shrink it, so I expanded it, the way a bruise on a fruit rots it entirely. At some point, we're all deceived. Some days I hear her voice in the kitchen, other days only my echo. Call it grief or despair, it doesn't matter. Every day I kneel down and feed it. Bless this rash of fires, this flooded city, this cracked, parched earth, so all the water, all the salt, all the spoils of this world hear me say, I am your daughter too. So I write a lot from the perspective of being a mother, but I also have poems about being a daughter in here too. And this poem called Ethnic Arithmetic, I wrote being the daughter, talking about being the daughter of a Cuban immigrant. My mother immigrated from Cuba when she was 9 years old. And it's Harvard, sort of this mythical place in my imagination because I've never been there myself. It's very hard to get there, as you know. This arises from that place of harboring, more than one identity at once, and being confused about that growing up. The other thing I'll say is that this is a contrapuntal poem, so you read the left side and then the right side, and you bring the two pieces together, like in a musical piece where the two distinct melodies form a third composition. Again, I check ethnicity boxes, as if I could measure with a stick figure to derive the crude dimensions I've wanted to keep separate as black beans and rice, never together. My mother sighing, it's how a true Cuban eats them. Her quick smile betraying some part of me quiet, another confused, as though, like her, with a doll and suitcase forever in hand. She rubs the white of her forearm with two fingers, a gesture I've learned conveys superiority that says, look at me, I belong here, not there. Check guilt, shame, denial, check every cliche. Write fractions half and half next to squares, a type of equation, devise an algorithm of my identity. Those parts, moros y cristianos, nunca congri, never together, but you don't have any accent. Who am I to know who I am? Sliding back and forth invisibly, and because of this, and maybe only this, which feature to cover or show, as if a distinctive mark, a curl of tongue, a darker jaundiced eye, check what's fair, what's not, I know exists to erase me. Again, I check ethnicity boxes, write fractions half and half next to squares, as if I could measure with a stick figure a type of equation, devise an algorithm to derive the crude dimensions I've wanted of my identity, those parts to keep separate as black beans and rice, moros y cristianos, nunca congri, never together. My mother sighing, it's how a true Cuban eats them, but you don't have any accent. Her quick smile betraying, who am I to know who I am? Some part of me quiet, another confused, as though sliding back and forth invisibly like her, with a doll and suitcase forever in hand. And because of this, and maybe only this, she rubs the white of her forearm with two fingers, which feature to cover or show, a gesture I've learned conveys superiority, as if a distinctive mark that says, look at me, I belong. A curl of tongue, a darker jaundiced eye, here, not there. Check guilt, shame, denial, check what's fair, what's not. Check every cliche I know exists to erase me. So the next poem we're going to read comes from my experience teaching high school English. I taught it for a number of years, 7.5 years, both in Vermont and then in DC. And about a third of my students were immigrant students in Columbia Heights in DC. And this poem comes from one of my experiences with them. English 2. English 2 was also the title of the sophomore English class. It was very creative. English 2. But miss, I make good money, he tells me, after we've tallied the days missed. enough for his black jeans, black hoodie, sneakers, and the rest to send back to El Salvador. You should see me, miss, at work sometime. I don't say I was there last week at the Asian fusion restaurant where water pipes down a green glass wall and you can order dim sum at any time of night. I don't say I didn't see him while he worked in the back, scrubbing dishes, mopping floors, hefting economy-sized containers of rice and oils, spices and cans of sauces, sorting silverware in bins, taking out the trash. When hours later, he should be in my class, where we're reading things fall apart, and when he's there, I'm often at his side to catch him up, to help him get at least enough to pass. My grade, I want to know my grade, miss, and I have to tell him he's failing, as his older brother chides him in English and in Spanish. He doesn't know I understand both because I didn't say I understand, nor did I offer to speak in my broken Spanish. If I'm the white maestra to them, keeper of test scores, the red pen, of a kind of knowledge you can buy your way into if you're lucky, if you pass, I wouldn't deny that truth. I imagine how it might have been for my mother when she arrived in Miami in 1960 from Havana, the only Hispanic in her class, when abuelo forbade singing or laughter, noting how many were dying or dead or in prison back home. It's not the same story, it is the same story. I go back and forth in time. I hear abuelo say lo más importante son los papeles, and my mother say speak English outside. But my student, not yet a man, sits in front of me in a country not yet his home, a country who doesn't see him or even me sometimes, and I wonder, what can he learn that he doesn't know from me? Who am I to say this book is worth the clothes on his back, the money home? How can I tell him what a day is worth? The next morning, his empty chair, and later, miss, I'm sorry about class. The next poem I'm going to read was a pandemic poem. I started corresponding with another mother poet, is actually Chloe, who Dan and I know mutually, and we started writing poems to each other, and this comes out of that experience. The other thing I want to say is that around the time that I wrote it, was during, or it wasn't during, but it was sort of the aftermath of the Kavanaugh hearings, and Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, whose testimony we have not forgotten, is mentioned in the poem as well. Letter to another mother with excerpts from the handbook on mothering, which no one receives anymore, but by which we're conditioned to believe exists, and without which we're damn near harmful to our children, where it might read on page 1087, to soothe swollen neck glands, dip buttered toast in warm milk, watch the yellow globules float to the top of the milk skin, which even as an image I find comforting to imagine. But what can I tell you about the blank page under the entry active shooter drill? Where would I start? I guess with guns in schools and churches and Walmarts next to backpacks and hermetically sealed organic baby food pouches. I guess with bulletproof vests, security guards, checkpoints, lockdown drills, 911 calls to parents from closets saying maybe their last goodbyes. I guess this wouldn't be a standard entry, a typical poem, a normal time. Do you remember when that was? Last week I learned to knit a scarf and then a hat. It seems like something mothers do. I canvassed, wrote thank you cards for my daughter's 2nd birthday and to Dr. Blasey Ford. Knitting helps pass time, even dark times, gives my hands something to do, and they want desperately something to do. Hands that did swaddle an infant, offer a finger to suck, but can't protect her from the haze of hate and fear which governs every breath in the present. Hands that want to be useful, beloved, worthy. Now my daughter won't wear any other hat. I guess you could say I feel kind of proud, like I did that. I made that hat. I made that child. Having carried that body inside my body, then watched that extension of myself drift away like a future I'll never see, a rain shower happening in a desert, a spoon dipped into a cloudy bowl of chicken noodle soup made by an artificially intelligent machine. Page 440, to clear a stuffy nose, boil a broth from leftover carcasses, necks, livers, add chopped vegetables, simmer and strain. There's something about seeing your future in front of you, quite plainly stumbling over rocks, tree stumps, getting tangled up in socks, and knowing you failed it before it ever had a chance. I've done some good things too, though. Don't you wish trying was enough as we tell our children it is? I purchased BPA-free plastics, checked for parabens, phthalates, pesticides, prepared her body with a prescribed amount of vaccines, thin but essential protections against diseases, pestilences. But no, it's not a shield for bullets, a boat for rising sea levels. It won't prevent raging wildfires, droughts, food shortages. I no longer seek perfection or expect to do any better collectively than our ancestral empires. There's something about sleeping in these times. I don't do it well, do you? What's your trick? There's something about feeling glad or talking about trees, weather, what kind of fruit pie to bring to the neighbor's potluck, especially if I want to be thought of as thoughtful, considerate of potential allergens, the harm I've already caused inadvertently, but nonetheless have caused. I sought to make amends, but it's like patching a hole in the knee space of her jeans, gluing a wheel to a toy truck, knowing full well it won't spin again. I'm often told to save things, her first lock of hair, baptismal dress, first drawing with crayon, first drawing with watercolors, a video of her first word, ball or book, first sentence, take that away, or here you go, mama. You know, page 878, create a scrapbook in spare time, tuck keepsakes away in a box tied with a ribbon. But how to stow away clean air, a cool breeze, whales, green trees, ice cream, these things, how do we save them? And if we could have, what do we say when we're asked why we didn't? And I'm going to read another poem about Demeter called Demeter Remembering. And then I'll read one more after that. I planted seeds where no one thought anything could grow, an insurance policy for raising her among humankind. There, in deep caverns or wedged in sand or under sheets of ice, I buried crocks full of pestilence and greed, knowing the likelihood of them being unearthed. And what did it feel like? To kill my darlings? To kill? It led me straight to hell, where I knew they'd be waiting. Of course, they blamed a childless woman for opening the jars, the altar of motherhood too sanctified. I cut first, or maybe it was my own daughter running away. Either way, you know what they say about us. Women are gods, we're a jealous lot. But mothers? There's no ends to the earth we wouldn't scorch or drown with love. I had my doubts, we mothers do. Even if she returned to me, I knew some part of me would not. I took the emptiness of my hands and scattered it everywhere. Is there another way to be true to yourself? Forgiveness has never been something I wanted, as if I had a choice. And I wanted to end on a more positive note, which is funny. A lot of the poems I'm writing now, I'm challenging myself to write into brighter futures, that are still possible in our moment. And I actually find that's a really difficult thing to do, but it also is encouraging. But this poem, I think, marks a turning into that. It's called Theory of Probability 2. The moon tugs the earth through tides and seasons, but it's the earth, I read, that possibly shaped the moon into a pockmarked and bulged egg, forming it before it formed. I believe it. One day I caught my daughter's face at an angle, as if it were the same pixelated puffed face first sonically rendered, her body forming before formed. I understood in that moment I understand nothing about probability, a question of odds suggesting a future and its shape, a matter of how likely or unlikely for debris to churn into an oblong ball and cool, or for cells in dark chambers to cross over double helix binds, bloodstreams, blighted fields of stars. What the tide lets in, lets out. Ageless.
I'm going to do what my one professor does and make you double clap. Thank you so much to Autumn House Press, Mike, Christine, Jan, Dan, and Sarah. That was fabulous. I really appreciate all of you and all that you've done for the Pittsburgh Literary everything, truly. So thank you. Please buy some books. We have a lot of Jan's books, some of Jan's books, and Sarah's book. You can check out over here or on the other side. And it's last call for drinks. So if you want anything from the cafe, time to see Jill is now. And yeah, thank you all for coming. Sarah will be signing books over here. So please feel free to come say hi. Have a good night, everyone. No, I was How was that?